So let's talk a little bit about our uh, Python, not JavaScript, Python OOP relationship stuff. Um, just raise hand emote if you have gotten through all the stuff in that section in Canvas. Cool. Sweet. Has anyone not gotten to that section or not gotten a chance to take a look at it yet? All right. Um, cool. So I think what I would like to do is cool. Taking a small link. What I would like to do is take a look at um, the many to many lab because I think that is going to uh, give us insight into both of them there. So I will. I guess let me go ahead and share that code there if I can find it. No, nope, nope, nope. There it is. Cool. Let's see here. Over here. So let's take a look at what we are doing here. First off, um, so this lab is going to be, I think, yeah. This lab is going to look at a lot of the stuff that is going to be on the code challenge. I think basically, I think all the code challenges we have for this phase are um, that sort of V-shaped relationship between three classes. In this case, book, author, and contract. So contract will touch both of those, and we will make classes for all of them, and then um, I think all of them need some internal information, so probably touch some class variables and methods and whatnot, and then create these relationships in Python. Um, Going forward, a lot of this will be kind of automatically done for you by an ORM, SQL Alchemy, in the same way that a lot of the React stuff um, did things that you had to do in vanilla JavaScript. So learning like the fundamentals of this and then moving ahead with that. So let's see what we have here. We're going to oh, can I run that? Let me see if I can run the test to make them all fail. Yep, cool. Should get a bunch of failed tests. Great, perfect. Awesome. Oh yeah, it stops at the first one. Fantastic. So it'd be terrible if they just worked out of the box. So what we're going to do here, we're going to have three classes. And again, they're going to have this sort of V formation. It's going to be a book class that just has title, author class just has name, and a contract class that has that belongs to an author, belongs to a book, which means that that middle class is going to need to keep track of both of those. If we were doing a one-to-many situation here, we'd have two classes. If it was just books have authors or books have contracts, um, they would just have the one key going there. But since we're hooking up both of them, many to many, we are hooking up two. And the many to many kind of the so those are these are the two main relationships we're going to have between classes in our data schemas, right? We'll have things that are one to many. So a bookshelf is going to have many books on it, but each book is only going to be on one bookshelf, or each song is going to be on a playlist. That's your one to many. And this one in this case is going to be our many to many, and the many to many is between the book and the author, really. We have books that have many authors and authors that have many books. A book could be authored by more than one person. And then we kind of have this Not that the contract is not a thing in itself, it definitely is, but we kind of have this relationship between the books and the authors through this class. So we say, a book has many authors through a contract, author has many books through the contract. And the contract also has a date and royalties. Great. Um, so the first thing that we kind of hook up here is, I want to say this is a thing that we're always, probably not always going to do, but when we create an ORM, there's generally a sense of like a way to say, give me all of the things of this class, and that generally means doing a select from the database. In our case, we don't have a database to play with, so we're going to have each class keep track of all of the members or all of the instances of it. The author property should be an instance of the author class. Book property should be book class. Date property is string. Okay, cool. Also, I should raise exception pop down here. Got it. And then we're going to have methods on those classes. So looks like we're just doing authors and contracts, but of course we could have any number of methods on all these classes. And in a real situation, that's probably what you would do. Cool. So let's start with yeah. So if we go into lib, do we have, okay, we're putting them all in one file. Hey, look at that. Class is already made, halfway there. So yeah, again, in a real application, you would have these all in each class in their own separate file. And then those would be all included in your main application. Cool. So as usual, as we go through this, if you have any questions about how I'm doing something or why I'm doing something, or do anything that you don't understand, or just want to ask any questions, feel free to stop me at any time. Happy to talk about stuff. So here is great. And don't need that, and great. So let's take a look at our classes again. Cool. Let's just go through one at a time. Book class has the following attributes. So for each of these, we're going to need to make an init method here. So let's go ahead and do that. Init. Don't need that. That's just an optional thing you can do in Python. I think it still works. That lets you specify what the return is going to be. We don't really need it. Cool. I think, well, I'm not going to skip ahead. So for our book class, we're going to take one string, and that's going to be a title. So self title, and yeah, just to keep it simple, I'm not gonna use a property thing. I'm just gonna keep them on the class there. We can play with that later if we want to. So self title equals title. Don't need a semicolon. String, and yeah, we'll do that when we get to it. Author class. We're gonna take a string for that as well. Or book class has a title. Need to switch those around. Name. There we go. Title. Awesome. And then, so our contract has an author, a book, a date, and a royalties. Cool. Author, date, author, book, date. Ooh, and then we go through and do those for all those. So author. I wonder. Nah. Author. Book. Another advantage of using an ORM means that you don't have to type all this stuff like this usually. So that saving typing is always good. And reading, when it's already made. Fantastic. So that should probably pass some of our tests, right? Let's see. Well, great. We did get a 1/5 of the way through. So we've got a book with title, author, contract. So we're going to throw in our validations now. This is all the basic setup before we start talking about the relationship stuff. Or actually, this is kind of the relationship stuff here. The book and the author. So author should be author, book should be book, date should be a string, number, all setters should raise exception upon failure. And that's what we're getting here. Cool. So let's go ahead and put all these on that out there. Yeah. Do I want to? What do I want to do? I'm trying to think if there's a better way to. Yeah, let's go ahead and do this. So we need to check if the author is an instance of the author class. So we can do something like if um, not his instance, then we can say what do you want to say? We want to say author, yeah, author, author, or cool. If not instance, if not is instance author, great name. Let's raise our exception. So raise our exception. Is it checking for exception or that specific exception? Let's find out. Oh yeah, it's only looking for that kind. Great. So let's go ahead and do that for the other ones here. And despite Python's motto of there's only one way to do it, there's lots of different ways to do this. This is just the way that I'm choosing to do now. So I'm going to look at book. And kind of the reason I was kind of thinking this through at the beginning was I know I'm going to be typing this over and over again. And I'm just thinking if there's a easier way to go about it, but as long as it works, it works. We can fuss with it later. So we'll do the same thing for date, which we want to be a string, I believe. Str. And if not date, nope, we want date royalties. Let's do this right. Is instance. There we go. Getting there. If royalties is not an integer, we're also going to raise an exception. Cool. Cool. Let's see what that gets us. Ah, cool. So those all worked. Great. Standard stuff. Which one of those I was thinking about coming up there? Yeah. So let's just go through and do the next part then. And we can either look at the repeat or we can look at the errors. So each of these is going to have, like it says, all classes should also keep track of all the members using a class variable. I guess I could have done that first. Just going along with the tests. So each of these is going to have all. And we can just say all equals just an empty list, right? And we can actually do that for all of these. Give a little bit of space, a little bit of breathing room. Cool. All right. So now kind of want to look at our init methods again, looking at author has contracts. Yeah. Ooh, interesting. Um, let's ignore that test for now. So what do we want to do to keep track of these? We want to put them all in all. So when we successfully create one, works they all, is it append in? Yeah. Um, and I'll give it a class name just in case. Append, yeah, that's what we want. Author all append self, because that's we want to append the instance itself. So when init is called, the first thing is the instance itself, the thing that is initializing. And so that object, that instance, is the thing that we want to push on the class variable or class parameter property all. Um, so we should be able to access those as we go along. So let's do the same thing here for title or for yeah, I don't want that in it. We're gonna say book all and self. And once all of this stuff is set, we want to do contract all equals, nope, append self. Great, great, great. Cool. I don't think that's going to fix this here. So I think author class should have method contracts that returns list of its contracts. Okay, cool. I get what we're asking for here. So that probably passes tests down the line. So we have this keeps track of all the methods. And so now, yeah, here we are. So I guess before we jump into that part, this is, even without the all stuff, this is the basic setup for creating these relationships, right? The kind of outer classes don't really need to keep track, but this join class basically is a thing that is keeping track of the relationships between authors and books. And so you can think of, if you're looking at the SQL stuff, you can think of this class as kind of a join table. So because we can't keep a list of books in the author table, we can't keep a list of authors in the book table. We need this extra table to hook these things up. And in our case, it has extra properties like the date and royalties. But yeah, so the middle class is the thing that's tasked basically with keeping track of those outer classes. And so it's just a set and arbitrary sets of those things. One author could have 1,000,000 books, and that's the only thing. Each of those books only has one author. Every book and author could have 10 other authors and books attached to them. That kind of thing isn't really restricted by the table setup we have here, or the class setup we have here. That will be translated to tables as we go forward. So yeah, any questions about the relationship stuff that we've set up here? All right. Cool. Let's keep going then. So the author class should have the following methods: contracts, self. So this, interesting. So if I'm reading this the right way, this seems to tell me that contracts is an instance method because it's taking self. But that's not a problem. Author class should have the following methods: contracts self, returns a list of related contracts. Cool. So let's go up here in our author class, and we're going to make a new method here. And so this is going to be an instance method. So we can call this on instances of books, not necessarily the book class itself. So contracts self. And it's not going to take anything else. Cool. So we need to look at the list of all the contracts. So it's going to be, contracts, contract all. So we need to look in that list, and we need to get a list of only the contracts that have this author. Yeah, clearly it would have to be a class method. Does it say that? Yeah, so I would specify this saying this instance method should return a list of all the contracts that this author is an author of. So yeah, so we're looking at contract all for that, because again, this is our list of all the books, or sorry, all the contracts, and each one has a related book and author. So we start off with contract all. I can think of 3 or 4 ways to do this off the top of my head. If I was doing it in any other language, my first go-to would probably, I have a list. I want to turn it into a smaller list based on some assumption. I would probably do a filter here. Filter. No. I need to look up how to do filters in Python, because that's not how I usually do it here. Python filter. Right. So here, this is why I don't consider Python an object-oriented language. It supports object-oriented stuff really well, but instead of saying, oh, I'm going to call filter on this list because the list is an object that I can call methods on. Nope. We would do filter. And then we have our checker function, and then we have the so this would be is this author. That would be our we make a method to return true if this author was part of that, and we return this. So if you do it this way, it works in most languages. This would be my preferred way to do it. However, that is not, as they say, quote unquote, Pythonic. So we're not going to do it that way. So in Python, we're still going to work with contract all. In Python, a lot of the things that you would reach for a map or a filter, even a reduce, maybe, yeah, maybe not. In Python, when you would reach for one of those functional methods, we're instead going to, so you could also create an empty list, iterate through the list, and add the things to the thing if it matches the thing, right? And that's kind of what we're going to do, but in a more Python way. I don't know how much the curriculum talks about list comprehensions. I think there's some stuff in there, but I don't think it emphasizes it enough. You're going to see them all over the place in Python. And I was pretty resistant to them when I first came across them. I'm still a little bit resistant, but it's a really good way to do stuff in Python, I think. So how do we do a list comprehension? Basically, so if we were just going to return the whole list, we just return the whole list. Instead, we're going to kind of construct a list on the fly out of this. So first step is to make a list. Great. This is a list with the one member contract all, which we do not want. So the way a list comprehension looks for it's for thing in no so Dutch inside out for each well, let's just do it for real here. So I'm going to look at each contract for the con for each contract for just a regular contract and contract all. So this is basically the looping over the list. We're going to say, for each contract in contract all, and then that first contract is the variable we're passing into the second part of the list comprehension, which is the expression. So right now, this is just going to return the entire list, which is fine. We're going to say, oh, return a list comprehension. We're going to construct it into a list, and we're going to say for each contract in contract all, give us the contract. So just by itself, that's going to give us the whole list. And what we want to do is only give it if a certain condition is true. So we only want this to happen if the contract, and that's going to be the variable contract here, right? Author, which we have, equals, and then we need to make sure it matches the thing that it's calling, that is calling it, so self. And since we're going to be matching up objects, we can, an object is equal to itself. So again, this list comprehension, a little bit inside out. So it's kind of like an inside out for each, basically. So we're saying for each contract and contract all, give us the contract. And then this is the part where we would do a filter. This is the thing that we would make into a function that we pass into the filter. If the contract author, and it's referring to that, or this actually, is equal to self. So that's a list comprehension. You're going to see them everywhere in Python. They can do a lot of cool stuff. I think the syntax is a little bit super unintuitive at first, but you get used to it if you use them a lot, just like anything else. Let's see if that passes the test before I go shoot my mouth off. Hey, look at that. Cool. Sweet. And so this is an example of one of those outer classes reaching into that join class and using it to basically, it's not manipulating the list of other classes, but it's using it to for its own purposes. So what questions do you have about this part? How do folks feel about the list comprehension syntax? Thumbs up, thumbs down.
So I'm trying to I feel good. Like the syntax, I mean, it for the most part makes sense once you're like, okay, just put that thing in the front again, because like you said, it's not like exactly translated to English how we talk.
In Dutch, it makes total sense.
Yeah, looking at the README. So it's okay. Line 56 is the one where it asks us to do what we just did.
Yeah. And I think that is a little bit mushy language. If I was writing that specification, I would definitely write it differently. But when in doubt, look at the test and you can see what it's looking for. In this case, values author, values book, values royalties, has contracts. So it's going to take it's created some stuff up here. It's going to take that and where were we there? It's going to create the author and book here, and then it's going to has contracts. Contract equals that. Great, makes a contract, and then it's going to check to make sure that when you do that, it only gets that list. The test could be more thorough, but that's what it's asking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I was kind of just like thinking out loud there because yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes the test I can't exactly tell or like what it says. I'm like, well, I think I did that, but you're not saying I did. Or then there was a couple I can't remember because I did this like 4 or 5 days ago. But when I was going through this the first time, there were a couple instances where I was super stuck. So and I peeked at the solution and was like, where the hell did it ask for that? Like, I couldn't map from the instructions to what the output was, but I can't remember off the top of my head exactly which things that was I was hanging up on.
But if we come across it, call it out, and we'll.
Yeah, I will. I think it was like some of the latter stuff, like when we get to doing some of the like the contract and royalties methods. Or and there was the contracts by date one. Now that I'm looking at it, that definitely I was like, I don't. Ugh. It wanted me to do a lambda thing, which I kind of like
Huh.
just pushed to the back of my head because in the section on like the lambda stuff, it was like, but you'll probably never even really need to use this. And I
Not
said,
true.
great, I'll, I'll forget about it.
Yeah. If you're, especially if you're using, the mapper filter syntax, you're going to use lambdas for that. Pretty
Okay.
much anywhere you would use an arrow function in JavaScript is where you would use a lambda here.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. Any other questions or comments on what we've done so far? Cool. So cool. Line 56, check. Next up, books. This method should return a list of related books using the contract class as intermediary. So what is this asking us to do? Should return a list of related books. What does related mean in this case? Um, Interesting. Let's look at the tests. Cool. So it's creating a book, an author and a book. It's creating a contract for that, and author needs a method called books, and book just needs to be in it. Oh yeah, because we're calling author books. Okay, cool. Returns a list of its books. Great. So same. Yeah, I was reading that inside out again. So it's going to be kind of the same as contracts. Um, yeah, so let's see what that looks like. So we're going to define books. That's going to be an author self. It is a self, right? Uh, yeah. Cool. So it wants us to use, read that again, using the contract classes intermediary. So we are going to look at, so we wanted to return all the books. Oh, all the related books. So um, I think the easier way would be to look in the book class, but if we want to look in the author class or the contract set, so the way I would do it would be to look at all the books in the book class and return all the authors there. But I guess it only wants books that have contracts, not just anyone's unfinished garbage. So we're going to look at all of the contracts that this author has. So I could do this whole thing again, or I could use the method that we just wrote. Return like that. And so using that, we're going to do another list comprehension. So we just want to say, and there's not going to be any, we don't need to do any if in this because we're already grabbing, this is going to give us just the contracts that the author has. So we want to return, basically we're just doing a map. We're just mapping, um, yeah. So for each of these, we're going to return. So for contract and self contracts, we're going to return the contract book. I think that's right. So double check here. Should return a list of related books using the contract class as an intermediary. Related books. Okay, related books meaning books that this author has a contract for. So we are getting all the contracts that this author has, and for each one of those contracts, every single one, we are just going to give it the book. So for each contract in health contracts, return the book. So this would be a map in a different language. In this one, we say, map, give me the book. It would look like, we could do this. Let's do that there. We would return, that's not what things look like here. We would return something like map. Would be the list is the second part. And then the first part's gonna be a function, and that's where we could do our lambda. This is a contract, and it would go to I forget the syntax for it, but basically the contract book. That's not the syntax for lambdas, is it? I don't think it is. Python lambda. It's a colon. That's what it is. So again, this is kind of inside out. We're going to call the built-in function map, which is not attached to anything. We're going to, the second argument is going to be the list we're mapping. And then we're going to give it this anonymous function, which is the Python equivalent of an arrow function. It's a lambda. And it's just a function that says for each contract, return the contract book. If there were not list comprehensions, that's how I would do it. But you can see that it's about the same. And yeah, it's more, again, quote unquote, Pythonic. So let's see if that works. Cool, got that. So it looks like that's the last author one. Is that right? Book class has method contracts in terms of list of his contracts. Really? Fascinating. um, Interesting. Does it intimate that that shouldn't be in here? Royalties, contracts by date. No, interesting. Wow, yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna pass that test then. We're going to basically do the same thing backwards on books here. So we would define, we're looking for a book contracts self, and we're going to return. So again, we're going to look at all the contracts. So list comprehension. So for each contract, no, let me do it inside out again. Contract all for each one of those. For each contract and contract all, we're going to return the contract if the contract author itself. So this is the same as that, only we are looking for that in a book. Let's see if that's what it was looking for. It contains more. Search error.
Should that be book instead of author in the comprehension?
Sure should. Author. You when you're not copy pasting in the brain. There we go. Cool. That's what we want. And we want, I guess it's looking for, it doesn't say that in the README. It doesn't say it on README. All right. So similarly, we're going to write a method authors that returns a list of its authors. Again, that's just going to be the converse of this. Do it without thinking about it. Maybe it'll work. Yeah, that worked. Cool. So again, that's just the backwards version of that. Back to our README now. There we go. Good. Author has signed contract that takes a book and a date and the royalties, and it creates and returns a new contract object between the author and the specified book with the book, date and royalties. With date and royalties. Okay. So this is an author. It's called sign contract. Sell. Cool. So we want to create a new, let me check what the test is looking for. Yeah, what it doesn't say here is, yep, it is looking to, you also have to return the contract because it's looking at that. That should say that in the README. So cool. Let's make that happen. So we're going to return, we're going to create a new contract, not new, just contract. And we just need to give it, so contracts take author, book, date, royalties. Oh, it needs to take all those things, right? Self with the book, the date, and the royalties. And so we're just going to create it with all those things, right? The author is going to be self, book, date, and the royalties. And when we create it, it's going to take care of putting it in all and everything, so we don't need to worry about that at all. Let's see what happens. Cool, that looks good. Yeah, so this is an example of a method on an instance of a class where it is creating an instance of another class using itself. I think you're definitely going to see that in Code Challenge stuff. But I think it's the specification makes it sound harder than it actually is. And the only trick is to, in this case, we're returning it because I can see in the test, it's looking to catch it from there and do tests on it. Cool. Any questions about doing that? Cool. We have one last one for author. Great. Should return the total amount of royalties that the author has earned from all of their contracts. So contracts. Great. Easy. Not easy. I know how to do it. So it's going to be called total royalties. And it's going to take itself, right? Nothing else, right? So here we're going to return. Again, we're going to need to look at all of our contracts, and instead of doing this whole rigmarole again, I'm just going to use our self contracts again. So that's going to get us our list. We need to, so here's where I would do a map. And so instead, we're going to do a list comprehension. And I want to turn the list of all the contracts into a list of all the royalties. So for each contract in self-contracts, I want to get the contract royalties. For, yeah. So it's looking through this, it's changing this into that. Python. Great, so that gets us the list of all the royalties. If this was an object-oriented language, I would say something like that. Call the method on that sums everything up. Unfortunately, it's not, so we will call the built-in function, not method, sum there. So we're looking at all the contracts. We are, for each contract, we are turning it into a royalty. So we have a list of all the royalties for all the contracts returned by this. And then we're just going to sum all those up to get a total of all those. Am I lying? Let's find out. Yeah, that worked. Great. And it looks like we only have one more test to pass. There will be things like this on the code challenge for sure. Not exactly the same, but similar flavor. So the way to do those is get comfortable with list comprehensions and give yourself another refresher on like all the little built-in functions, like how to get a sum of something, how to get the average of stuff, how to find the max or min of something. Because those are, I think I've seen all of those on there. Cool, but let's do our last, hopefully last test. Contract class. So we're going down to contracts. Great. We're going to contracts, and we are going to create a class called contract by date that takes the class. Oh, it's the class method. Great. Contracts by date. And this method is going to return all the contracts that have the same date as the date passed into the method. Fantastic. And we'll look in here. That's our last test. Great. So it's going to reset all the contracts. This is you should not be able to do that in object-oriented language. You should have to call like a reset method, but here we are. We're going to create a bunch of authors and books and contracts, and then we're going to call contracts by date, and we just want that to assert contracts by date. It says it wants to take a date, right? Why isn't it taking a date there? Oh, because the test isn't actually testing that. Cool. You know what? I'm going to write the method first and show you how bad this test is. So we want to make a class method here on contracts. That's ridiculous. So we want to make a method called contracts by date. It's a class method, so it's going to take the class CLS, and we need to give it the decorator class method. Great. So the test is just checking for all of the contracts. So if we returned, where were we? If we just returned contracts all, I bet that's going to pass the test. Nope. Okay, cool. Contract all. Boom, boom, boom. Contract to contract. Is it? Oh, does it say sorted? Okay, that's not what the test is doing at all. The test is looking for a sorted list of dates. That's not what that says at all, is it? Am I just reading it wrong? That's not what that is asking for, right?
That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let me write something that's going to pass the test, and then let me rewrite the test to actually do what the thing says. That's a bad test. That's just a bad test. So it is looking for a sorted list of stuff. I should submit a pull request to that. Let me make a note of that. Send pull request for many. Cool. Because that's broken. That's wrong. Cool. So let me write it so it pass the tests, the test, and then let me rewrite the test, and then rewrite the function so that it passes the real test as a little treat. So Right now, it just wants it sorted. And again, I would probably say sort and pass it a method there, but instead, because it's Python, we're going to not sort, but sorted. Sorted. So we're going to sort it, and yeah, we can say class all, I guess, since this is the class method, it's going to be called on that. And if this is subclass for some reason, we would want it to be called on the subclass. So this is going to sort it in an arbitrary way because they're objects. So we need to tell it what the key that we are sorting on is. And the key is not the actual key. It is an anonymous function. It's a lambda here. So it takes the lambda. Lambda is going to be lambda contract. And we just want to return the contract date. Am I writing that wrong? Just no. Yeah, there's no space there. Cool. So I think that will pass the test. Let me see. Hey, 100% passed. Great. So you might see something like this on the code challenge. However, we want to make it match the specification. So I think what I would like to do, let's just comment that out. So if you haven't written a test before, because we don't have any material on how to write tests for Python, this is how for this testing method for PyTest. So it uses this assert thing here. And basically it's just going to assert that this thing is true. So if we call contracts by date, is actually asking for a date. So let's pass that into our function. And so let's just give it, well, let's just give it this date. I would expect that list to just be contract 2. Getting all contracts that have the same date. Great. And that should be double equals. Cool. That seems to be what the requirement is asking. Does that seem right?
Yeah.
Cool. So let's go ahead and rewrite our method to match that. So instead of that, we're going to want to do a list comprehension again. So we're going to look at all the contracts here. And so we want to say for, contract for contracts in sales all contract. And so we want to do that if contract date matches our date. Yeah, backwards thinking. So for each contract in our list, change it to the contract only if the date on that contract matches the date that we pass in there. I think that'll work. Hey, there we go. Cool. The methods that you'll be asked to write for the code challenge are they should not mismatch what it says in the README. If they do, look at the test or ping me and write the right function or rewrite the test. If the test doesn't match the README, I can't in good conscience say that you fail if you don't make that one. So yeah, if the README and the tests, I think there are tests, disagree, do your best and don't sweat that one, because that's a bunch of bullshit. But cool. So yeah, hey, we got to learn how to write a test. So we wrote a test that matched the and this is the cycle that you'll be doing in a real job. You'll get you know, maybe vague or weirdly worded requirements, and you need to, you know, either you or a test engineer, or you if you are the test engineer, um, write tests that match those requirements. If you have trouble writing a test, like if this doesn't make sense, um, you go back to the person who gave you those requirements and say, this requirement is not clear. Um, should it be this or this? Um, Big temptation, which I've definitely given into many times, is to just take a guess. um, and that will work some of the time, but often the majority of the time they will come back and say, no, that's not what I meant, do this instead. Which, you know, if you're getting paid by the hour, go for it. That's a great way to do that. But if you care about your time, ask for a clarification up front. And then after you write the test, you'll write code that matches the test, which should theoretically match the specification. So that is that. I think this is pretty close to what you'll be seeing on the code challenge. So if you are comfortable with this, you're going to be doing great. The biggest point of worry generally is the methods. Just, I mean, get comfortable with list comprehensions and do like an overview of like all the little built-in things that that Python has. And don't be afraid to Google it. You're totally allowed to Google stuff in the code challenge. So do that. Hey, look at that, just under an hour. Cool. Yeah,
I've got a question.
Awesome.
So I guess other than the fact that yours is like 40 lines shorter than mine, is there any other reason why? So like right here, 36 through 50.
Mhm.
I did like the whole property and setters decorator
Yeah.
thing. Like, other than the fact that, yeah, mine's 90 lines and yours is 55. Is there any reason why one or the other besides length?
So if I was writing this in a real application, I would definitely be do it the properties way.
Okay.
Basically, if the test is not checking for it, don't worry about it. So it's definitely rule one territory. Just like if it works, it works. If you know, you can put extra bells and whistles on it if you want to, but if that's not what the specification is asking for, then you don't have to do it.
Sweet.
Malicious compliance is the there's a word keyword. Cool. What other questions do folks have? Feeling good. All right. Yeah, go through this one by yourself a couple times. Play with changing the test around. Especially like on your project, I'm a big fan of writing, like, write your specification, write your tests, then write your code to pass the tests. And one of the advantages of writing user stories for your project is that you can often match up the user stories to tests if they're broken down enough. And that way, when all your tests pass, you are done with your project. Or you didn't specify it well enough. But we can talk about that later on. But yeah, go through this one again. If you don't feel like you can like do it with your eyes closed, do it until it's boring. We will do some more similar review. I'll dig some more stuff up to go through tomorrow. And yeah, other than that, last call for questions. Awesome. Cool. Sweet. I'll post this video for review in the usual places on my playlist and in the channel. And otherwise, thanks for hanging out. I'll see you in like half an hour. Bye.